Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about science. Last summer, National Geographic reported a relentless climate change-driven heatwave has caused a rash of fires on land normally too frozen to burn. Scientists fear it may become a regular occurrence. For months, Siberia has been experiencing extreme heat due to a combination of persistent sunny weather and human-caused climate change. Wow, that sounds bad. We humans really messed up Siberia. Let's take a look at that Siberian heat wave right now. It's minus 63 degrees Fahrenheit. During the summer of 2010, Moscow had a bad heat wave and there were lots of forest fires. Climate alarmists declared that to be the new normal. And of course, it hasn't happened again since. Now let's look at a report from September 30th, 1927. A group of motorists traveled through Belgium, Holland, Germany, Denmark, Lapland, and Finland. The motor party journeyed to 270 miles north of the Arctic Circle, prepared for freezing weather. To their continued astonishment, the temperature was never less than 90 degrees in the shade. The intention was to reach the Arctic Ocean, but 40 miles of marsh country on the coast prevented this. An average of 210 miles a day was made on the journey, which was arduous in the extreme, and at one time the car had an actual race with death among the forest fires in Sweden over terrible roads. When they say there was 40 miles of marsh country on the coast, what they're saying is that the permafrost was melting in the 90-degree heat. So what was happening in the Arctic in 1927 is exactly what was happening last year: heat, melting permafrost, and forest fires. National Geographic described it as climate change when it's actually just cyclical patterns in the weather. Now let's look at another story from October. Alarm as Arctic sea ice is not yet freezing at latest data on record. October 22nd, 2020, the lack of freeze-up so far this fall is unprecedented in the Siberian Arctic region, said Zachary Laib, a postdoctoral researcher at Colorado State University. Zach Laib gets quoted by the press quite often for his alarmist claims. Unfortunately, once again, this claim is not true. In 1922, the U.S. Weather Bureau reported, reports from fishermen, seal hunters, and explorers who sail the seas about Spitsbergen and the eastern Arctic all point to a radical change in climatic conditions, with hitherto unheard of high temperatures on that part of the Earth's surface. Many of the old landmarks are greatly altered or no longer exist. Where formerly there were great masses of ice, these have melted away, leaving behind them accumulations of earth and stones, such as geologists call moraines. At many points where glaciers extended far into the sea half a dozen years ago, they have now entirely disappeared. And this paragraph is very interesting. Formerly, the waters about Spitsbergen have held an even summer temperature in the neighborhood of 5 degrees above freezing. This year it rose as high as 28 degrees. Last winter, the ocean did not freeze over, even on the north coast of Spitsbergen. And here's a map from 1922 showing how Spitsbergen, which is now called Svalbard, was ice-free for the entire winter. Zach Laib claimed that no ice at the end of October was unprecedented, but in 1922 there was no ice all winter. So now let's look at the claims from October of last year. For the first time since records began, the main nursery of Arctic sea ice in Siberia has yet to start freezing in late October. The delayed annual freeze in the Laptev Sea has been caused by freakishly protracted warmth in northern Russia and the intrusion of Atlantic waters, say climate scientists who warn possible knock-off effects across the polar region. Ocean temperatures in the area recently climbed to more than 5°C above average, following a record-breaking heat wave and the unusually early decline of last winter's sea ice. So what they're describing is exactly the same thing as what occurred 100 years ago. Now let's look at the current Arctic sea ice extent graph. Extent on this date is the highest it's been for the past 5 years. I'm currently pointing at the blue line to show what sea ice extent was back when the article was written. It was quite low at the time, but since then it's grown very quickly, and now it's rapidly approaching the gray 2 standard deviation band. What these scientists did was they looked at a short-term weather pattern and declared it to be due to climate change. This is the graph of Arctic sea ice extent every single day for the past 15 years. The extent increases in the winter and it drops in the summer, but there's been no meaningful trend over the last 15 years. Climate alarmists keep predicting the demise of Arctic sea ice, but it simply isn't happening. In 2008, Norway's leading expert predicted that the Arctic might be ice-free that summer. Also in 2008, Canada's leading expert predicted that the North Pole might be ice-free that summer. Based on the brilliant predictions of these scientists, British swimmer Lewis Pugh tried to kayak to the North Pole from Svalbard. He didn't make it very far, only about 15 miles. In 2007, NASA's leading Arctic expert predicted that the Arctic could be ice-free by the year 2012. And the head of the National Snow and Ice Data Center in Boulder, Colorado, Mark Cerise, said the Arctic is screaming. Seth Borenstein from the Associated Press and National Geographic also predicted in 2007 that the Arctic could be ice-free by the year 2012. The BBC was a little bit more conservative and they predicted that the Arctic wouldn't be ice-free until the year 2013. Nobel laureate Al Gore was even more conservative. He said the Arctic wouldn't be ice-free until the year 2014. And James Hansen from NASA, who started the global warming scare before Congress in 1988, was even more conservative. He said the Arctic might not be ice-free until the year 2018. The Sierra Club was certain that the Arctic would be ice-free, though, by the year 2013. Journalist Mark Hartsgaard said it wouldn't be until the year 2015, though, before the Arctic was ice-free. In 2009, Barack Obama's science advisor John Holdren said that the Arctic was not only going to be ice-free in summer, but it was also going to be ice-free in winter. But here's today's ice map from the Danish Meteorological Institute. It sure looks to me like there's lots of Arctic sea ice remaining. But there wasn't always lots of ice in the Arctic. Around the time when Stonehenge was built, there was probably no ice in the Arctic Ocean at all. And this book by Hubert Lamb from the British Met Office showed that around 5,000 years ago, trees grew all the way to the edge of the Arctic Ocean. That means there was no permafrost back then, but now the tree line has receded 80 to 100 kilometers further south. I doubt that Stonehenge Druids were driving SUVs. These cycles in the Arctic are completely natural. What's also natural are people imagining climate change. This article was published in the Brisbane Courier 150 years ago this week. Imaginary Changes of Climate. 3 consecutive years of drought, while they've stimulated the inventive resources of practical agriculturists, have had the natural effect of calling forth a plentiful crop of speculation from weather prophets and projectors and half-instructed meteorologists, and all the philosophic tribe of Laputa in general, to whom the periodical press now affords such fatal facilities. We've often noticed that in the tabular statements of those compilers of weather records who write to the Times, useful and welcome as their communications are, every season is sure to be extraordinary, almost every month one of the driest or wettest or windiest, coldest or hottest ever known. Much observation, which ought to correct a tendency to exaggerate, seems in some minds to have rather a tendency to increase it.